Hi, and welcome to Let's Talk Cops Part 2. So I got some good comments after I put out that Let's Talk Cops piece, and I wanted to address a couple of questions that I got. So the first question, and I think this is a question that comes up a lot, is are the police today over militarized? Right? We see them in riot gear and armored vehicles and shields and sometimes even camouflage. Um, Typically, that's going to be our SWAT teams. But anyway, I mean, it's a valid point. Our police officers, our police departments, are way more militarized today than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah, I mean, even 10 years ago, it was really kind of on an uptick, but now it's really militarized. So are we over militarized? Well, yes and no. I understand the point that police officers should be these, community helpers, right? We should be out in the community serving the public and making people feel safer. And I understand that with the military type equipment, that it makes some people intimidated, or maybe even lots of people intimidated. But here's the problem with demilitarizing our law enforcement. Law enforcement as a whole is a reactive entity. It's a reactive body. And what I mean by that is once a crime has been committed, we respond. Proactive policing is so, I don't want to say rare or uncommon, but it's definitely not the most common type of policing. And it's so uncommon that we actually call it proactive policing. We have to specify that it's proactive. We have proactive units, doing, bait bikes in high theft areas and that sort of thing. But largely, law enforcement is a reactive entity. And so just like our services to a robbery or a domestic violence or whatever, just like those are reactive, our militarization is also reactive. It started, the first big one is the Hollywood bank shooting, where two individuals rolled up to a bank, they robbed the bank, and they had no desire to do a quick getaway. They were going to shoot their way through. So they had a vehicle with a trunk full of ammunition. They were in full body armor, and they had fully automatic weapons. And they just started shooting the police, and the police were seriously outgunned. They eventually went and commandeered hunting rifles from a sporting store down the street. One officer was shot, and I believe it was a dentist that ended up pulling him in and suturing him so he didn't bleed out. I mean, it was Hollywood. It was a Hollywood movie set appearance, but it was in real life. And from that point on, all across the nation, that sort of thing started to become more and more common. And so reactively, police had to step up their weapons, step up their armor, step up their tactics. And all of a sudden, we're being trained in urban combat. I think on the one hand, there's a lot of police officers who would like to not be so militarized because it means that they're safer. We would like to do community policing at large. And of course, when I talk about this, again, in my first couple of videos, I talked about how there's bad eggs in every profession. It just so happens that in law enforcement, a bad egg is a very serious thing. And once again, who doesn't like a crooked cop? Nobody likes a crooked cop. The whole world hates crooked cops. So that's something that we can go after together. We don't need crooked cops. We don't need cops using heavy hands, excessive force, intentionally, right? And I'm going to have to I'm actually going to write a note to myself. Um, I heard a call for reduction of sovereign, or not sovereign, but qualified immunity for police officers, which is that's a scary road. That was a scary comment, and quite frankly, I hope it was ignorant. Um, but anyway, I'll touch on that a little bit later. So the Hollywood Bank shootout was the first, but then we started to see things like Columbine, where I heard a lot of people criticize the Columbine police officers who just sat outside and let the kids get slaughtered in that school. Um, but you have to remember that back in the 90s when that happened, they were following protocol. They were following a more community policing model protocol, and kids died from it. And quite frankly, there's a lot of police officers who were not okay with that, and they really struggled emotionally and mentally from that. And and not to say that they had any worse hardship than the poor kids who were in that school, but that's what a non-militarized policing system looks like today. If we were to go back to a non-militarized police, that's what it looks like. Bad guys slaughtering kids and innocent people, with the police hanging out because they're not prepared. They're not equipped to deal with that. So yes and no. We are over militarized, and no, we're not. We are militarized to the point where we are able to respond to the threats of today. That's a sad thing to say, but it's the truth. So the next question I had was, does the militarized appearance of the police, does it foster violence? Does it promote violence? And I mean, that's a great question. I don't think so, because again, police are reactive by nature. We react to situations. And so if we go on a call that is, relatively a peaceful call, the police officer shows up with body armor on, hopefully. Not all police wear body armor, and I don't like that, but hopefully they've got their body armor on, and they'll have their pistol in their holster and handcuffs and radio like we're used to seeing. Officer Friendly had the same stuff 20, 30 years ago, and the situation remains calm. It's escalated by those that we come into contact with. And I know that there's some argument there. Yes, there are police officers who escalate situations either intentionally or unintentionally. If they're escalating it intentionally, then I'm on board with you. We need to deal with that. If they're escalating it unintentionally, that's a training issue. And to me, that's a training issue that, one, needs to be addressed, but two, if it can't be overcome, then that person needs to not be a police officer. Just my personal opinion there. And then the third question I got was, what kind of training do police officers receive? So it depends on the jurisdiction, and police licensure is by state. And so there's a couple different models for police certification, but pretty much all of them require somewhere between 730 to 1,000 hours of police training to become a police officer. But if we're honest, that's just enough to be semi-familiar with the concept once you actually go sit in a patrol car. And if you can hear my dog barking, I'm sorry. It's not enough, but there's only so much training you can do in a classroom and in a sterile setting. You need to go out on the streets to get the kind of experience that a police officer really needs to do their job. But it's not all a training thing. I talked before about how the United States of America has the best police training on the planet. It's my maybe not so humble, biased opinion, but we have some of the most fantastic training available, but it's not mandatory. And quite frankly, there's a lot of departments, especially small departments, who won't spend that money on training. It's not in their budget. Um, Police departments are way under budgeted, way under budgeted in almost every jurisdiction that I've ever been made aware of. We're talking about defunding the police right now. Talk about a nightmare. Law enforcement's already underpaid. We don't get the money for firearms training. We don't get the money for, we do de-escalation training, but a lot of times it's de-escalation training a la carte. The department puts it on themselves, and who really knows if they're a good trainer, and I'm not trying to belittle those departments, but you get a manual that teaches you about de-escalation, and then you have someone who has not a single clue about de-escalation teaching that class. All they're doing is reading a PowerPoint. And quite frankly, if the people in the room are sleeping, death by PowerPoint, then they're not learning much, and they're not taking anything out of the field with them. And the last thing I wanted to touch on today was dropping police immunity or lowering police immunity. To me, and obviously I'm biased on this, but to me, that's just absolutely incredible to even suggest that. I know police have a lot of authority. We've got the authority to, and I say we, I'm no longer law enforcement, but I can't stop saying we. Police have the authority to take a life when justified. That's huge. They have the ability to take away people's freedoms. I'm an attorney and I'm a constitutionalist, and I don't take the taking of liberties lightly. But police have the authority and the right and the duty to do that. So I don't take this lightly, but we are asking law enforcement to make split-second decisions based on their training and their experience, and then we're going to hold them personally accountable, personally liable for doing their job. I fully understand if a police officer does something horrible, they should be held civilly liable. But guess what? The law already allows for that. If a police officer is doing their job and they're using good faith, and what good faith means is that they're doing what they believe is right in that moment, and that what they're doing, the average police officer would do as well, then they are protected, from civil suit. And quite frankly, the medical community makes way more mistakes than the law enforcement community, but we've accepted that. They've got a motto to do no harm, and the medical community kills more people than law enforcement by far. But we've understood that they're trying to do a good thing, and they're human. Humans are going to make mistakes. Police officer, doctor, nurse, HVAC technician, garbage man. You name it. Whatever profession you are in, you are going to make a mistake at some point in your life. But we've decided that law enforcement doesn't get to make mistakes. And I've got more on that too. Police officers have a hard time admitting to mistakes because they'll lose their livelihood. We've got to a point in society where we're not able to say that was a mistake. I'm sorry. We can't do that anymore. Anyway, so that's my video for now, for today. I want to come back. I want to do one more, because I read an article from a former police officer that it was his call to defund the police, and he makes some valid points, and he makes some very dangerous suggestions. And I think he had a skewed view of law enforcement, and maybe some of the bad things that he talks about, maybe he did see those happen in his department, but those don't happen everywhere. And I'm okay if those are happening, the bad things he was talking about, if they're happening, I'm with you. Let's go stop that. Let's go fix that. Um, but I also think this is a very, very bitter man, a very bitter police officer, former police officer, and to have any experience as a police officer and then call to defund the police is beyond me. I mean, that's reckless, that's dangerous, and quite frankly, it's ignorant. And so, anyway, I want to address that article. I'll address a few points that he makes. But yeah, until next time, thanks so much for watching and for your support. Let's share this. Let's get the conversation out. And I want to start bringing people on. I want to start talking to people and giving you some exposure to other police officers. I've got a friend who's a police officer in England. I want to bring him on. I would love to bring people on from the community as well and just have a calm dialogue. So anyway, thanks again. Thanks for watching. Please like, share, comment, subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss out when I release new content, and we will talk to you soon.